Continuing on with Christ the Eternal Tao, read through the foreword and the introduction. Now we're going to start with part 1, Christ the Eternal Tao. First, a brief note on the 9 Enneads. The poems that follow are not a translation of the Tao Te Ching, but rather comprise an entirely new work which is based on and quotes from the Tao Te Ching. In these poems, we will look at Christ through the innocent eyes and intuitive vision of Lao Tzu, and at the same time present Lao Tzu's teaching in the light of a new revelation. Therefore, what follows might be considered a, quote, New Testament of the Tao Te Ching, unquote. In keeping with the aim of this work, we have attempted to follow the form of the style of the Tao Te Ching, including the later's division into 81 chapters based on multiples of 3. Here it should be noted that the ancient Chinese placed great significance on the number 3, seeing it in the primal principle of order. And in this way, their teachings foreshadowed Christ's revelation of the mystical life of the triadic Godhead. In chapter 42 of the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu wrote, quote, "The 3 produced all things," unquote. The chapters of the Tao Te Ching itself consist of the sum of 9 groups of 9, or 9 Enneads, 9 being 3 groups of 3. In the following part, we have highlighted this pattern. In order to unlock the mysteries of Lao Tzu, we have made use of the teachings and insights of Ji Ming Xian, as recorded in Father Seraphim's lecture notes on Ji Ming's classes on the Tao Te Ching. Then, in bringing Lao Tzu's wisdom into a new dimension, we have drawn extensively from the Eastern Christian writings spanning nearly 2 millennia. These sources are included in the notes at the end of this book, together with the commentary on their 9 Enneads. In quoting from the Tao Te Ching, we have relied primarily on heretofore unpublished partial translation of it by Ji Ming and Father Seraphim, which we have found to be the most penetrating. But we also refer to numerous other translations and to the original Chinese text. This is a note on the illustrations. I will try to show those the best I can. In China, at the end of the 1920s, there was gradually formed a group of artists who worked in the faculty of the Art Academy of Fujian University in Beijing. At that time, the head of the academy was Qian Yuandu, a classically trained painter known throughout China. Although he was not a Christian, Qian Yuandu undertook a study of the Gospels with the view of painting scenes from them. Over the course of time, he was joined in this endeavor by his pupils Lu Hangwei, Wang Suta, and Sui Zihao, Van Sida, the Manchurian prince Pu Shetzi, and others. In painting scenes from the life of Christ, the group of artists worked in the style of traditional Chinese painting with traditional symbolism in compositions. The pictures were painted on silk, often in bright, joyful colors typical of Chinese folk paintings. Gradually, these artists came to believe in Christ, and in the middle of the 1930s, they were baptized. Qian Yuandu chose Luke for his Christian name since, according to the ancient tradition, the Apostle Luke was the first icon painter, and hence, the patron of artists. Lu Hongnian took the Christian name of John. Like their teacher, he and Wang Suta came to be well known throughout China. An illustration in part 1, except for the painting facing page 55, are by this group of painters, reproduced from the book The Life of Christ by Chinese artists. There's a part that I skipped here that I wanted to go over right before that. A note on the Chinese seals. So all the seals in this book, except for the signature seals, have been created by Yu Shentang in the ancient Dazhuan style from the Shang Yan and Shu dynasties, carats 1766 to 221 BC. The characters are written in the oldest form that has come down to us, in the way Lao Tzu would have written them in the 6th century BC. After 221 BC, by order of the first emperor, Shi Hengti, the seal script was standardized throughout China and its style was formalized. The earlier Dazhuan style, by contrast, allows for much more creativity and freedom. This is an interesting part here. So the seal Christ and the internal Tao. The oldest form in which we find the character Tao, and they show the character here. I don't know, you probably can't see it. It appears thus. So it's comprised of three elements representing respectively a road, a human head, and a human foot. The head is topped with two plumes that were used in ancient days to signify the rank of general, and thus it means the leader, while the picture of the foot was meaning to follow. Thus, in the ancient character of the Tao or way can be deciphered as to follow the leader on the road. I find this fascinating that the character of the Tao has such resonance with the Christian Trinity, and in a symbolic sense, how we have the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, how we have the head, the foot, and the road in between, which is the character of the Tao. So this reminds me or makes me think of Jacob's ladder, which is analogous to the road between the head and the foot, the head being the principle of meaning, the fundamental principle, and the foot being the organizing and material structural principle that actualizes the meaning from above. So I found that pretty interesting and fascinating. So next up, we'll start with the first Ennead. In the beginning was the way. I'm just going to read from chapter 1, this first one, and then I'll continue on in another video so I don't make this too long. So chapter 1. Before light was made, there was the primal light that was not made, the primal essence, dwelling in the darkness of incomprehensibility. Of this the ancient prophet spoke, saying, quote, "He made darkness his secret place," unquote. The formless and immaterial place of knowledge, whither our understanding or concepts gain no admittance. And the ancient sage spoke too of this, calling it, quote, "the darkness within darkness, the gate to all mystery." There's no name whereby the primal essence cannot be named, neither in this age nor in the age to come. We call him essence, for he is the sea of essence, indeterminate and without bounds, spreading far and wide beyond all notion of time or nature. He is wholly essence and solely essence, yet he is above essence. Because he is not of the essence of anything that is, we call him being. For before all else was, he is, yet he is above being, above all existing things, even above existence itself. We call him the One, for he alone is wholly simple and without parts, yet he transcends the antinomy of the one and the many, being not limited to any concepts, even the concept of the one. He is neither one nor unity, neither many nor multiplicity. Finally, we call him mind or thought, for he is himself mind by essence, wholly mind and solely mind, yet he is entirely above mind and thought too. For every thought expresses a duality, the relationship of the thinker and the object thought of. Neither of these two can return to complete simplicity in itself. For the thinker has need of the object, and the object has need of the thinker. But the primal essence is neither of those who think nor what is thought of, for he is beyond them, unlimited, self-existing, free and simple, standing in need of nothing. To conceive or be conceived is proper to the nature of things, secondary to the primal essence. Thus, the essence that can be conceived of as essence is not the primal essence. The being that can be limited to existence is not the primal being. The one that can be limited to the concept of oneness is not the primal unity. And the mind that can be thought of as the primal mind. The one who will in some way possess any thought has not yet left duality and arrived at simplicity. But the one who has completely abandoned it has arrived in some fashion at the primal mind, through having supremely relinquished the power of thinking. Chapter 2, the second Ennead, the first Ennead. As our mind utters from itself a word, so did the primal mind utter the primal word, logos. The primal mind essence is a womb. The primal mind essence is a father. Out of this womb of the mind, the word was begotten outside time. Of this birth the ancient prophet spoke, speaking as the father mind, quote, "From the womb, that is, from my essence, before the morning star hath begotten you. End quote. And of this birth the ancient sage also spoke, saying, quote, something mysteriously formed, born before heaven and earth, tranquil, boundless, dependent on nothing, and changing not. Unquote. Mind does not exist without word, nor word without mind. A thought of the mind is a word hidden within. A word is a thought which has come without. Thought is transformed into word, and word transmits thought to the hearers. Mind coming from itself is thus the father of the word, and the word is the son of the mind. Before the mind, the word was impossible, and the word does not come from anywhere outside, but rather from the mind itself. Thus also the Father, the all-embracing mind, the thought above and beyond thoughts, his Son, begotten of his essence, the word above and beyond words. Chapter 3. As our actions proceed from our mind, so does the primal action proceed from the primal mind. As the primal word is like a sound, a still sound, so the primal action like a breath, a still breath. And as breath rests in a word that is uttered, so does the primal breath rest in the primal word. In you there is breath, material and impersonal, diffusing itself while sustaining your separate and distinct life. In the primal essence, as life itself, there is also breath, but a breath that is purely spiritual and personal, not diffusing itself, but sustaining the life of everything without distinction. The breath of the primal mind is like a wind. The wind blows where it wills. You hear its sound, but cannot tell whence it comes or whither it goes. So is the breath who rests in the word, and so are these beings who rest in the breath of heaven. Chapter 4. Before the world was made, the mind, word, and breath were one, sharing in the one essence above all essences. The oneness of these persons is a mystery, whose vastness cannot be comprehended by even the highest spirits. Nevertheless, we attempt to give name to this mystery of oneness, the name of love, a name so great that, finding it impossible to give it due reverence, people despair and treat it as commonplace. The mind, word, and breath had this perfect love between them. Not only did they have this love, they are this love. Therefore, love existed before the world was made. The love of the maker of things cannot merely be extended outwardly to the universe made by him. In the three, this love is directed inwardly also, within the primal essence, in the mystical inward life hidden in the depths of divinity. For the three have always been one, but the world did not know this love until the Word himself came into it, sent by the mind as the messenger to the world of the primal love that had created it. Chapter 5. The triangle is the first full form. The three is the principle of order, the order that must exist before the multiplicity of things. Therefore, the ancient sage said, quote, the three produces all things, unquote. The three acting as one not acting without the others. The triad contains itself in perfection, for it is the first that surpasses the dyad. It lies beyond the duality of matter, of subject and object, of self and other. The triad is beyond the distinction of the one and the many. Its perfection goes beyond the multiplicity of which duality is the root. 2 is the number that separates. 3, the number that transcends all separation. The one and the many find themselves gathered together in the three. For the triad, being many, is also a unity, not a unity of self-absorption, but of love. For the three have one nature, one will, one power, one operation. As one, they do not blend or become confused, but they cleave to each other, having their being in each other. This is the perfect love, the original unity, the original harmony, the final mystery, to which no human thought had ever succeeded in rising. Chapter 6. The word is begotten of the mind. The breath proceeds from the mind. Yet there was never a time when the mind existed without the word and breath. They dwelt in the darkness that was before darkness, outside time. Yet they made all things within time, for time and darkness came into being only when movement and light were made. by thinking which is beyond thought, the primal essence creates. The word brings forth and fulfills the command of the mind. The action breath accomplishes and perfects, and with these two hands of the mind, thought becomes deed. Chapter 7. The mind spoke through his child, the word, and through the word all things were made. Thus did the ancient prophecies say, quote, the mind spoke and all things came to be. He commanded and they were created, unquote. And, quote, by the word of the mind were the heavens established, unquote. Of this also did the ancient sage speak, calling the pre-eternal word the source of the 10,000 things. All things then were made by the word, and without him was not anything made that was made. All worlds and worlds within worlds, all matter, all life, all intelligences, of numbers so vast that if their names would be written, everyone, even the world itself, could not contain the books that should be written. The mind spoke through his child, the word, and at his breath there appeared the innumerable multitude of spirits. Therefore did the ancient prophecy say, quote, the mind spoke, and all the hosts of spirits were made by the breath of his mouth, unquote. The mind spoke, calling upon the pre-eternal counsel, the world and the breath, saying, let us make man. And through the breath of heaven entering into man's nostrils, man became a living soul. The 10,000 things were created out of nothing, out of the darkness that was before darkness. And when this was accomplished, the still, unchanging word resounded through all that was made, and the still, unchanging breath blew through all that was made, moving upon the face of the silent deep and giving to all life and motion. Chapter 8. Once there was a time, said the ancient sage, when all things became harmonized through the one. The heavens receiving the one became clear. The earth receiving the one became calm. Spirits receiving the one became divine. All things receiving the one began to live. Without the one to make clear, the heavens would be rent. Without one to give calm, the earth would dissolve. Without the one to make full, the valleys would be exhausted. Without the one to give life, all nature would suffer decease. The three produces all things, said the ancient sage. Yet all things become harmonized through the one. The three being one in love creates as one, and thus it is love that creates and sustains life. This creation of the world by love in the unity of the three is the mystery of the world's original harmony. Chapter 9, last chapter in this first Ennead. I am the way, said the pre-eternal word. As through the world all things come into being from the mind, so through him do all things return to the mind. Therefore the ancient sage said, the movement of the way consists in returning to the source. The word is the only way by which they came, and he is the only way by which they can effect their return. For, quote, no one goes by the mind except through the word, unquote. He is the only way which is natural for them to follow. It is he who fills, it is he who empties. He empties himself, that with himself he might fill all things. He allows himself to be torn down, that through him all things might be raised up. Relinquishing his utter transcendence, he goes forth and from himself in the abundance of his love, that all things might go to him, returning to the source.